In the state of Nuevo León, specifically in Mexico, an 18-year-old young woman named Devani Escobar did not return home after going to a party on the evening of April 8, 2022. What happened to her has become the most discussed news in Mexico, and debates about what actually happened continue to this day. Devani Escobar, the only child of Dolores and Mario Escobar, was a student of law and criminology. Friday, April 8, 2022, at around 8 p.m., she went to the party with two friends, but she didn't return home. The next day, a big number of police officers and volunteers joined the hunt for her. On April 11th, Devani's parents, who were desperately trying to locate her, shared a picture on her social media site, which revealed the first anomalies and specifics of her absence. The image, which was taken from the side by an unidentified person, shows the body standing in the center of a motorway. It's unknown if she was aware that she was being photographed at the time. When his daughter did not come home on April 9th, her father received this image and put a caption saying that this was the final time anyone saw his daughter, according to Mario. Additionally, he noted that Devani's group companions safely made it back to their homes. They allegedly placed Devani in a cab and requested that the driver take her home. This picture was taken at the time by a taxi driver. It wasn't immediately obvious how or why this photo was shot, but in Mexico, where femicide is a widespread issue and statistics show that 10 women disappear on average every day, it went viral and sparked a massive outrage. Protests found new traction in the state of Nuevo León alone, where 52 women went missing in the first quarter of 2022. On April 13th, hundreds of worried citizens marched through the streets of Monterrey, carrying banners with pictures of the missing ladies, while the detectives working on the case started to piece together what had happened before Devani's disappearance. Their case was supported by the young women's friends' statements and video evidence from security cameras. In light of the fact that Bonnie only met the second young woman on the day of her disappearance, it is important to note that calling the two young women Bonnie attended the party with friends is a stretch. The police discovered video from a business located about 4 miles away. The tape taken at 11:30 p.m. shows the young woman standing next to the cashier, 5 kilometers from the residence of the deceased. They also bought plastic glasses, Coke, and a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. The party waited near the store for almost an hour, during which time they used some of the things they had bought. They departed the business at 12:49 a.m. and took a taxi to Nuevo Castillo Bar, which was about 8 kilometers away. When they got there, they discovered the event they were going to have. They were advised that another party was nearby, albeit it had already concluded, so they chose to head there at 1:30 a.m. Even though they were unknown at the private property party, the young women begged permission to enter. 2 hours and 15 minutes after they were given permission to enter, the body can be seen attempting to flee from a man on surveillance footage provided by the police, but he catches up with her and stops her. When other people arrive, Bonnie tries to kick the man again but misses. The argument appears to have been settled. When partygoers were questioned by the police, they said that the argument started because the body was very inebriated. She had earlier purchased a bottle of vodka, which some people tried to seize, but she wouldn't give it up and insulted them. It's crucial to remember that this account of what happened was given to Bonnie's friends, who decided to send her home by partygoers. They recorded the phone number of the cab driver who had taken them there, and at 3:54 a.m., she called him to request a ride to take the Bonnie home. When the taxi arrived at the spot, Devani climbed into the back seat alone, leaving her pals behind. They approached Cigar and spoke with the driver there. The interior of the automobile is illuminated in the following recording, which was made only 20 minutes later and 100 meters from where Devani boarded the taxi. The Bonnie appeared to be fighting with the driver, while already seated in the front seat. She was found to be unwilling to depart, and the taxi. The cabbie tried to phone her friend for assistance, but he was ignored. He sent her a WhatsApp message warning her that she was acting aggressively and refusing to leave at 4:25 a.m., and that he didn't know Devani's specific address. The taxi driver let Devani's companion know that she got out of the vehicle. He snapped a photo, the same one that depicts Bonnie standing in the middle of the road, as proof. The taxi driver pleaded with Bonnie's companion to visit or call the girl's parents frequently, but she refused. Devani's buddy ignored the taxi driver's request to gather because there was only 400 meters between where she got into the car and where the picture was taken. The cab driver made several futile attempts to contact your pal before being forced to leave. But before he left, he sent her a message explaining that he couldn't force Devani back into the car since he didn't want any issue or charges of kidnapping or other such behavior. After Devani vanished and this picture was released, rumors started to circulate. The young woman had gotten out of the cab because the driver was harassing her, he claimed. The taxi driver was questioned by the authorities numerous times. He searched his car and phone, but could find no evidence linking him to the young woman's abduction. The taxi driver left the young woman and fled, according to video that the police were able to retrieve from a transportation company's security camera. Devani was seen in the video standing in front of a camera that was pointed at the road. About 50 meters from the camera, a woman can be seen standing on the road for a while. It's hard to say if she was conscious of what she was doing at the time. But shortly Bonnie begins to approach the camera. There doesn't seem to be anyone pursuing her when she arrives at it at 4:30, as shown by the timestamp, knowing where Bonnie was last seen. The region where she was last seen was the focus of the search. Police reports state that Bonnie didn't step foot on the transportation company's property. A motel around 150 meters away from the transportation provider also had security cameras put there. However, as law enforcement officials noted, no recordings were created from these cameras because they were solely used for real-time observation of the location. Police and volunteers meticulously investigated the area of the transportation company, the motel, all nearby streets, and vacant lots, but no signs of the body were discovered. 100,000 pesos, or around $5,000 US, was offered as a reward. Was made in exchange for any details that would help with the investigation. Bonnie's body was discovered on the grounds of the motel, only 100 meters from where she had been last seen, 1 week after she vanished and after 12 days of assiduous searching by family volunteers and law enforcement. It is important to note that despite several searches by the authorities in the motel vicinity, the body was still missing on April 21st, when the motel personnel noticed a pungent odor coming from an abandoned building. They themselves alerted the police. From an underground tank where the body was later found. Let's examine the motel and its surroundings in more detail so that you can determine which tank is being discussed. There is a round building. These are the motel's primary structures, including the restaurant, which has been closed for a number of years, and the pool, which has not been used in a long time. There is only one entry from the road, and the entire area is cordoned off with barbed wire. The subterranean tank where Devani's body was is here, close to the wall. A lid covers the first tank, which has 2 openings that were both open, and the body was removed from the second tank, which has 2 entrances that were both open. The tank has a depth of 4 meters, 43 centimeters from top to bottom, and it is divided into 2 portions by a 20-centimeter partition within. At the time the body was found, the water level in the tank was 90 centimeters deep in both portions. It's also vital to remember that the interior barrier of the tank is not completely solid. The right and left sides of the tank are connected by a 23-centimeter wide channel. We shall come back to this point in a moment. Even more oddities started to show up as soon as Devani's body was found. The young woman's body was recovered from the water, but experts determined that the cause of death was a cranial brain damage in the forehead region, which might have been brought on by a fall into the cistern. The police quickly come to the conclusion that the occurrence was an accident. It was also found that the death occurred between 5 days and 2 weeks ago. Nevertheless, the father of the deceased did not accept the accident explanation and was perplexed as to why the police, who had searched the motel area numerous times, had not discovered the body of his daughter earlier. The Attorney General's Office of Nuevo Leon removed the special prosecutor in charge of missing person cases in response to these accusations, claiming carelessness and mistakes in the investigation. However, the prosecutor was present before dismissed recordings from 2 other security cameras, one at the motel reception and the other inside the vacant restaurant, also came to light. The police had previously asserted that the motel cameras only functioned in real time and did not record any images. We'll look at these recordings after I remind you that it was 4:30 when Devani was found on the road. The motel property was 150 meters away from the restaurant's entrance. Devani walked peacefully toward the transport firm, and no one was chasing after her. However, she stormed into the motel's grounds 5 minutes later, as if someone were after her. Devani was seen jogging alongside the restaurant by the camera that was placed across from the entrance. No one can be seen chasing her in the section of the film that the authorities released. Therefore, it can be assumed that something happened when she arrived at the gate to the transportation company. Anything compelled her to flee. The second recording is for my restaurant camera. We must first comprehend the area that this camera can catch before we can comprehend the locations where the body is visible in the video. Consequently, the door leading to the road is located in the upper right corner, and this glass door leads to the inner courtyard. You can only get to it by traveling around the restaurant at 4:35 and 31 seconds without climbing over the barbed wire gate. Bonnie may be seen rushing toward the entrance to the She Fled inside the motel grounds on the footage at 4:36 after running to the street, as we've observed before. Bonnie moves closer to the glass door and peers inside before moving on to the spot where the fence edge meets the restaurant structure. She seemed to have spent the last 20 minutes cowering in a corner, concealing. Throughout those 20 minutes, nobody approached her. At 4:56, Bonnie comes around the corner and proceeds along the fence, eventually arriving at those cisterns. The official accounts of what happened state that the body stumbled and smacked her head when she lost consciousness of the open cistern in the shadows. The injury was in the area of the forehead, as was already indicated. If the young lady did really fall down by mistake, it is more likely that she did so after hitting her head. She would have leaned forward out of inertia had she taken a step without feeling the earth beneath her. The officials released an accelerated recording that lasted more than an hour to prove that nobody else was visible in this camera's field of vision. Upon careful observation at hour F4:56, the body emerged from the corner and proceeded along the fences. At 5:44, 30 seconds later, a shadow flickered on the door. At 5:47, 11 seconds, a car stopped opposite the door leading to the street. 12 seconds later, a silhouette of a person appeared next to that door. At 5:47, 44 seconds later, the car left. At 6:12, 14 seconds later, another shadow flickered on the door leading to the inner courtyard. To ascertain if someone was pursuing the recording, all available recordings are included below. Bonnie. According to the prosecutor's account, the police withheld the recordings from the video camera at the motel reception, which would require examination. Since Bonnie couldn't see the open cistern lids in the darkness, she fell and suffered a serious head injury that finally caused her death. Damani would have encountered 3 cisterns on her way to the cisterns. The first one would have been closed, followed by 2 open lids, but her body wasn't discovered there. The third one, but considering the circumstances surrounding the discovery of the body in the second, there were whispers going around that the young woman had been murdered before being put into the cistern. The authorities made evidence that suggested Damani was alive after falling into the cistern public in order to disprove these rumors. Her shoes and a scrap of cloth were also found there, along with her body, which was recovered in the left portion of the cistern. Furthermore, the wall that separates needs to be highlighted, dividing the cistern in half. Its width is 20 centimeters, and its height is 2 meters and 13 centimeters. The body's pocketbook, her face mask, and a white bra were discovered on top of the barrier. It is vital to realize that the only way to place anything on this barrier is to stoop down into the cistern. Since there is no way to go down or up inside the cistern, nothing can be placed on the barrier from the outside. The fact that Bonnie placed the items suggests that she was alive for a while, according to the officials. It is unclear whether Bonnie could have placed her belongings on the 2-meter, 13-centimeter high partition or if she threw them there. This suggests that Devani herself threw the items on the partition, a lighter and a set of 3 keys. Unfortunately, information regarding Bonnie's height could not be found. The appropriate area of the cistern contained both her phone and pocketbook. Although we can only guess as to what exactly transpired, if the body did fall and strike her in the head, she would have been bewildered, particularly given that it was dark. The barrier may have opened when she opted to toss her purse on it, allowing some of the contents to fall and land in the second half of the cistern. Devani's bra situation that evening is likewise unknown, as is whether or not it was in her purse. It's also not clear if she had a bra on that particular evening, or if it was in her handbag. It's also crucial to remember that she was dressed when her body was discovered. On one of the TV shows, the person's friends who she went to the party with said that she was intoxicated and that some people tried to take advantage of her, decided to send her home by calling a taxi. Right now, everything evidence points to the case being concluded and the death being classified as an accident. Damani's father disagrees with this account, and he thinks that someone was involved in his daughter's passing. The parents performed an independent examination after receiving the body, but the findings have not been made public. Mario Escobar claims that his future course of action depends on whether or not the authorities decide to keep looking into Bonnie's death or rule it out as an accident. What are your thoughts on this incident? Do you think it was a terrible accident or a criminal act? Share your opinion on this story in the comments and don't forget to like it. Thanks for watching.
In this video, we'll discuss crimes perpetrated between 1996 and 2014. Despite the wide time span, all of these crimes had one thing in common. They were all committed along Virginia's Route 29, a major thoroughfare. The police looking into these crimes made several attempts, some of which were successful, to connect the incidents in some way. Some of the criminals referenced in this video may have already come up in separate investigations, though. Here, we'll try to look at the events from the standpoint of several offenses. In 1996, more than 20 women went to the police and said they had all been chased by a man in a pickup truck on Virginia's Route 29. He would communicate an issue with their automobiles and flash his headlights. A white male between the ages of 35 and 45 with reddish-brown hair who was driving a pickup vehicle was characterized as this individual. He earned the moniker Route 29 Stalker, 25-year-old Alicia Reynolds. Alicia Reynolds said her husband Mark farewell on March 2, 1996, at 7:30 in the morning in Baltimore, Maryland, and left for Charlottesville, Virginia. She had a meeting with her mother scheduled for 10:30 a.m., but she had nearly 150 miles to travel. She held off till 11:30 a.m. Alicia's mother contacted her husband Mark, but did not hear from her daughter. Mark informed her that Alicia had departed 4 hours prior, and that by that time, even without rushing, she should have arrived. After making the decision to call the police, Alicia's car was eventually discovered at 6 p.m. on the side of Route 29. Despite being close to Culpeper, Alicia was nowhere to be found. When the car was inspected, there were no indications of a crime, and afterwards, specialists said the car was mechanically fine. What caused the young woman to leave her automobile unattended is unknown. An inquiry was launched. Soon, witnesses who had observed Alicia conversing with a man in a blue pickup truck on the side of the road were located. The alleged first victim of the stalker on Route 29 is Alicia Reynolds. All the women who had been pursued by the man in the pickup truck before she vanished and who hadn't previously recognized they were in danger came forward to the police and related their interactions with the unidentified pursuer after she vanished. It was discovered that 3 other ladies had previously dated in addition to Alicia. 2 of them were delivered to their destinations in the pickup truck, but the third woman, Carmelita Shomo, was not. Sadly, no picture of her could be located. A week before Alicia vanished, Carmelita stopped at his request. She saw someone flashing their headlights at her in the rearview mirror as she was traveling home from work on Route 29 that wet night. She stopped, and the pickup truck's driver followed suit. She was said there were sparks as the man approached her after getting out of his car. He then offered to give her a ride home, and she consented, telling him that it was coming from underneath her car while she was driving, and that it might be unsafe to keep using it. The pickup truck stopped on the side of the road after a brief trip, and the woman was then attacked. Despite having a fractured ankle, she was able to get out of the pickup truck and draw the attention of oncoming traffic, which startled the driver and caused him to speed away. However, Carmelita, an immigrant with poor English language, reported the event to the police. At that moment, no steps were done to identify the pickup truck driver due to the police officer's dismissive attitude and lack of respect for her word. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the police were unaware that their incompetence would eventually result in a tragedy for the Reynolds family. 2 months after going missing, Alicia was not located. Her body was located 15 miles from where her car was found, in a forested location. Laura Winans is 26 years old, and Julianne Williams is 24. May 1996, the same month that Alicia Reynolds' remains were found again, saw the father of Julianne Williams call the police on May 31st to report his daughter missing. She hadn't arrived at the appointed time since she and Laura Winans were on vacation in Shenandoah National Park. They were last seen extending their stay at the campground on May 24th at around 5:30 p.m. Following the police report, park rangers found the 2 women's bodies the following day. They were both killed by incisions to their necks and the binding of their wrists. Authorities gave May 28th plus or minus 30 hours as the date of death. It was discovered that there had been no sexual activity before the victims' deaths, and their possessions were still in their tent. We shall return to this incident later. This motiveless crime baffled detectives, and the authorities were unable to crack the case right away. Sophia Silva, 16, is a teenager. On September 9, 1996, 3 months later, 16-year-old Sophia Silva vanished from her yard in Spotsylvania County, without leaving any evidence of a struggle. Numerous searches. Sadly, it didn't produce any results.
Her remains was discovered in a King George County creek a month later. The test found that Carolyn McDaniel was 20 years old, and that Sophia Silva had also experienced sexual assault before to her death. 20-year-old Anne Carolyn McDaniel left her home in Orange and vanished 12 days after Sophia Silva was kidnapped. Occasionally, hitchhiking was something Carolyn McDaniel enjoyed doing. She was last saw hitchhiking on the road on September 20th, 1996. Her burned bones were discovered 2 days later, located in Culpeper County, only 15 miles from the location of Alicia Reynolds' body. Katie Lisk was 12 years old, and Kristen Lisk was 15. Despite the police's best efforts, 7 months had gone since Anne Carolyn McDaniel's death was discovered, and none of these crimes had any solid suspects. In the meantime, Spotsylvania, where Sophia Silva was kidnapped on May 1, 1997, was shaken by a fresh incident. Kristen Liske, 15, and her sister Katie, 12, went missing. The girls would typically contact their father when they got home from school because he was at work at the time. On this particular day, though, the father didn't hear from his girls, so he began making calls home. He went home right away because there was no response. None of the nearby residents had seen the girls, and they were nowhere to be found. The girls had come back, as shown by the bag with their school books that had been placed on the grass. But something had transpired since I got there. In the wake of it, a police report was made, and some 1,500 people joined the hunt for the girls. Their bodies were found in the South River, 40 miles from their house, 5 days later. The test revealed that drowning was the cause of death. Strangely, the water discovered in their lungs was probably clear tap water, much like in Sophia Silva's case. In their last moments, the girls' sexual integrity had been compromised. The types of crimes and some supporting evidence shown that a single person was responsible for these crimes. A Canadian visitor was riding in Shenandoah National Park on July 9, 1997, when she heard the sound of an approaching automobile. She was expecting the car to drive past, but it didn't. She noticed that the car was approaching her in an odd manner. The pickup truck's driver tossed a soda can at her before getting out and ordering her to take off her clothes. The woman tossed a water bottle at him and used her hands to block his path as he approached her. He tried to drag her into the car, using the bicycle as a barrier, but when he realized he couldn't, he got back in the driver's seat and tried to run her over. Being discouraged by yet another failure, she managed to hide behind a downed tree. The woman saw it as hell when a ranger just so happened to be walking by. He immediately radioed a description of the vehicle, a blue Chevrolet truck, and the person who was arrested as they were leaving the park. The culprit was identified as a 28-year-old man. On April 10, 2002, Daryl David Rice received his sentence of 11 years and 3 months in jail after pleading guilty to the attack in March 1999. In relation to the instances of Laura Winans and Julian Williams, Rice was charged. To refresh your memory, the young women's deaths were reportedly expected to occur around May 28, give or take 30 hours. It was discovered that Rice entered the park at around 8 o'clock in the evening by reviewing surveillance camera footage from that time. Dated May 25th. He returned to the park the following day at 5 p.m. and was seen on camera visiting the park on June 1, 1996, the day the young women's bodies were discovered. Rice knew he would likely receive the death penalty, so he hired a strong defense team that eventually had the accusations against him withdrawn. A hair discovered on the sticky tape used to bind the young woman was later determined through new DNA testing technologies to not belong to Rice. He was cleared of those charges in April 2004 due to insufficient evidence. But Rice's legal struggles were far from ended. The blue pickup truck he was driving when he was stopped belonged to his father, who resided close to Highway 29 in Virginia and was accused of being the Route 29 stalker. His attorney expertly handled the problem once more. When Rice was named as the attacker during the 2005 trial, Carmeliere Shomo, the woman who had successfully resisted the attack and broken her ankle in the process, pointed to a completely different person when she was shown photographs of men for identification prior to the trial. Years ago, in the middle of the night, the defense was able to sow a seed of doubt in her mind, making her wonder if Rice was the criminal. The defense team successfully exploited this uncertainty, which led to the charges being dropped. Additionally, there was no evidence linking Rice's actions to the Alicia Reynolds case, which is regarded as an incident involving the Route 29 stalker. Cases of harassment on the highway were only seized following Reynolds' disappearance. Additionally, nothing suggested Rice's involvement in the incidents in question, Spotsylvania and Orange. Despite numerous circumstantial evidence that the Route 29 stalker was in fact him, it was impossible to prove. As a result, the identity of the driver of the pickup truck that scared women is still unknown. Even with the given prize, the police made a concerted effort to solve these crimes, but they were unable to come any closer to the offender. 15-year-old Carol Robinson was at her friend's house on June 24, 2002, in Columbia, South Carolina, while an acquaintance showered. When a man with some pamphlets in his hands approached, Kara was watering the flowers in front of the house. He requested that Kara give her parents the items. He held a gun to her neck as she walked up to him and told her to get in his car. When he brought Kara to his house, she was chained and repeatedly forced to have sex, while the kidnapper was fast asleep. Kara was able to free herself, make her way outside, and eventually find a police station. She had been held captive at the station for 18 hours. Everything she recollected helped the police find her abductor, but by that point, he had managed to escape. The perpetrator was identified as Richard Mark, 38, an honorable man who appeared to be just like everyone else. Mark is a former member of the military who is married and works. He had left the Navy in 1987 after being exposed to a 15-year-old girl and her 3-year-old sister, it was learned. For this offense, he was given a 3-year sentence with probation. He was captured by the police in Sarasota. Ivana made the decision to commit suicide after realizing he had no other option and was marked by a gunshot and a burst of light. It was determined that he was involved in the cases of Sophia Silva, Kristen, and Katie Lisk, after inspecting his home and comparing the available evidence. The threads on the corpses of the ladies were an exact match to the strands on his bathroom carpeting. It's unbelievable, but forensic specialists were able to locate Kristen Lisk's fingerprints in the car's trunk 5 years after the crime. DNA testing. By examining the facts, it was finally determined who killed Sophia Silva Kristen and Katie Lisk. And it was also shown that his early life had a big impact on who he would become. When Mark was 6 years old, his father Joseph was giving him a bath, and water went into his eyes, causing him to scream. Mark's father Joseph was an alcoholic, and his mother was openly having affairs with other men. Joseph was enraged by this, and the child at the time claimed that his father intended to drown him. Family members claimed that Joseph also drowned, leaving their dog's Mark right in front of him. The pattern of his subsequent crimes is thought to have been influenced by this event, drowning his prey. Additionally, he was looked into for possible connections to the incidents on Route 29 and the Alicia Reynolds case, but none were found. Reports of the Route 29 stalker ended once the witnesses were dead, and Rice was incarcerated serving his sentence. But soon after, girls started reporting it again. Started vanishing once more in Virginia in 2005. An unidentified 26-year-old woman from Fairfax, Virginia, was being carried into a wooded area after being attacked from behind on Rock Garden Drive, while she was returning home on foot from a nearby store. Dark and poorly populated, it was already. She fought back vehemently and shouted, but the attacker eventually overwhelmed her around 10 p.m. He coerced her into a sexual act before starting to choke her. Thankfully, a bystander who was nearby heard the woman's cries and ran to help. The attacker made it away, and the police were able to collect a sample of his DNA. They also produced a composite sketch, but they were unable to capture him using this information right away. On October 10, 2009, Cassandra Morton, at age 23, was in Lynchburg. Cassandra Morton, age 23, vanished. She was last spotted on Park Avenue, which is located in Lynchburg's downtown. The only information the police could find when her family reported her missing was that she got into a black car with someone. Her remains were discovered 6 weeks later. Her body had been strewn with rocks by a passerby who had just passed by the last spot she had been seen. 20-year-old Morgan Dana Harrington was last seen in Lynchburg 7 days after Cassandra Morton vanished. Morgan Dana Harrington, age 20, vanished in Charlottesville, a nearby city 70 miles distant. On that terrible day, October 17, 2009, she was a student at a technological university. She and her pals went to see Metallica perform. When his opening band was on stage, she informed her friends that she would use the bathroom and then come back. Her pals were concerned because she had been gone for a while. When they called her at 8:48 p.m., she replied that she was outside the arena but was prohibited from entering due to the no re-entry rule. She also indicated that she was going home, but nobody seemed to think about how she would get there for some reason. No one can figure out why she left the arena since she never came back. She said that she needed to use the restroom, yet there are facilities inside the arena. It's still unclear how she got outside, or either it is genuinely unknown, or it is kept quiet for image purposes. Her wallet and phone were discovered the following day in a parking area close to the arena. 2 months later, on January 26, 2010, witnesses were located who had seen a young lady who resembled Morgan Harrington voting at a nearby bridge. A farmer in Albemarle County, 10 miles from the arena where the performance was held, found her bones. Later, the daughter's parents admitted that she was coerced into having a sexual encounter in the final moments of her life. Samantha Ann Clark, 19, vanished in Orange on September 13, 2010, when she was 19 years old. When Samantha left the house at 1:30 a.m. on the day of the incident, her mother Barbara was working the night shift. Her younger brother, who was 12 years old, stayed at home with her. He called his mother to let her know Samantha had left. When Barbara got home the next morning, she found her daughter's pajamas lying on the bed, indicating the teenager had changed before leaving. Admonish Samantha about threats he'd heard from friends. At the time, Taylor was not connected to Samantha Clark's disappearance in any way that the police could discover. The investigation came to a halt since the phone calls were insufficient to support any charges. Age 19 for Saga Smith. Saga Smith, 19, vanished in the same Charlottesville, 3 years after Morgan Harrington went missing there on November 20, 2012. She informed her roommate of her plans to that particular day as she was leaving her home. No one saw her again after that. The name of the guy she was meant to meet, Eric McFadden, was discovered by the police. He admitted during questioning that he was scheduled to meet with Sage, but that it never took place because he had other matters to take care of while the police were determining their next course of action. Alexis Murphy, 17, left her home in a truck close to Lynchburg, approximately a 30-minute drive away, while McFadden departed. She and her dad had made a deal that she had never broken the rule that she had to be home by midnight. The first time Alexis didn't arrive home by midnight was on August 3, 2013, and her grandmother instantly recognized a problem. The calls went to voicemail, so they were unable to speak with Alexis on the phone. Alexis was well-liked on social media and had many of friends. In an effort to locate Alexis, her parents contacted anyone who may have seen her on the day of her disappearance. This effort helped crack the case, attracted a lot of social media attention, and was featured in national news. People talked about the path Alex was scheduled to take via the notorious Route 29 from the shipment to Lynchburg. A movie theater in Charlottesville, Virginia, 40 miles from Alexis's house, and in the other direction from Lynchburg where she was headed, was where her white Nissan, which she usually traveled in, was discovered 3 days after she vanished. Although the area was cordoned off, forensic specialists could find no evidence of a crime in the car. One was made in the investigation. Surveillance footage from the Livingston Liberty gas station provided a breakthrough in the investigation. Detectives carefully reviewed the video, which was captured on Saturday, the day Alexis left her house for Lynchburg. A slim-built man who held the door open for Alexis as he entered the building caught their attention in particular. The cashier who worked that day admitted to the police that there had been a brief exchange between the man, and the cashier also clearly remembers a Daffy Duck tattoo on the man's neck and the fact that he was driving a camouflage SUV after Alexis had paid and left for her car. The man exited the petrol station first, and Alexis followed shortly after, according to further analysis of the video. However, given that she was traveling in the direction of Lynchburg, this might have been a coincidence. Another video clip of the same person was obtained by the police. It was taken by a camera at an adult business in Charlottesville 1 hour before he at the petrol station appeared. He bought a movie from the selection offered at those shops, but the key finding was that Randy Taylor was indeed the man who had made the purchase. On the night of her abduction, Samantha Clark had received a call from the same person. The whereabouts of Randy Taylor was promptly discovered by the police. Only 1.5 miles separated him from the gas station and his mobile home. A search warrant might be obtained thanks to video evidence showing Alexis Murphy and Randy Taylor interacting on the day of her disappearance. Anything that might be connected to Alexis's disappearance was taken by FBI officers. Inside the trailer, they discovered 3 items that were particularly noteworthy: black hair, a severed artificial nail, and an earring stud. In close proximity to Randy Taylor's porch, within 20 meters, they discovered a broken phone that was also taken in for inspection. Within 2 days, the outcomes showed that it was Alexis Murphy's phone. Analyses proved Randy Taylor's connection to the missing girl. The earring, nail, and hair that were discovered in his home belonged to Alexis. Alexis Murphy was still missing 11 days after she vanished, despite the fact that Randy Taylor had been taken into custody. When Taylor arrived at the courthouse, he was accused of kidnapping. Taylor began to speak when he recognized that the police were looking for information that would implicate him in both the kidnapping and the death of the missing young woman. However, his statement was now what everyone knew. He said that day Alexis was in his trailer as expected, but she wasn't there by herself. She was there with a black man named Damian Bradley who had dreadlocks. The authorities found evidence that Alexis and Damian Bradley had indeed interacted online and met in person. They visited Taylor's trailer, according to Taylor, to sell plants they were growing, and they had a beer. Taylor utilized a physical struggle between Alexis and her friend at some time to explain why Alexis's DNA was found in the police investigated Damian Bradley's alibi and discovered that he was in another state at the time. It seemed as though Taylor was merely attempting to place the responsibility elsewhere. In the meantime, FBI officers went back to the trailer for another push, and it worked. They discovered Taylor's t-shirt, which was worn the day Alexis vanished, and was now wrinkled below the couch. Eyelashes and hair extensions that are frequently used as extensions were wrapped within. After inspection, it was discovered that the eyelashes and hair were. These pieces of evidence were sufficient to accuse Randy Taylor of both the kidnapping and the murder of Alexis Murphy on May 8, 2014. Randy Taylor was given 2 consecutive life sentences in July after being found guilty on all counts. Taylor said he would divulge the whereabouts of Alexis's body if his 2 life sentences were lowered to 20 years in prison in response to Alexis's family, eliminating any remaining concerns regarding his role in the young woman's abduction. Declared that they would not engage in negotiations and would never give Taylor the chance to escape and hurt someone else. Before Alexis Murphy's family had any prospect of being able to say goodbye to her, nearly 6 hard years had gone. Human remains were found on private land on December 3, 2020, and on February 5, 2021, it was determined that the bones belonged to Alexis Murphy. Although Taylor was said to have disclosed the location of the remains, no agreements were made with him, and his sentence is still in place. It's important to note that Samantha Clark's case, who aired in 2010 and was tied to Taylor, was reclassified on January 15, 2021, and is now being handled as a homicide investigation. On September 13, 2014, Hannah Graham, an 18-year-old student, vanished from Charlottesville. She was last seen in the early hours of the morning at a mall. Extensive searches involving more than 1,000 volunteers were carried out a week after Hannah vanished, but she was not discovered. She was seen on surveillance video and the police found it. Jesse Matthew, 32, was recognized as the individual seen with Hannah in the video recordings. His flat was searched, but he wasn't taken into custody. He was named as a suspect in Hannah Graham's kidnapping 4 days after that. When a warrant was issued for Matthew's arrest, he had already left. The following day, he was captured in Galveston, Texas. He was thought to be planning to flee the nation and traveled to Mexico. On September 29, 2014, it was revealed that information gathered during Morgan Harrington's case linked Jesse Matthew to her death. Remains were discovered in Albemarle County on October 18, 2014, and they were eventually recognized as Hannah Graham's. Notably, these remains were located within 5 miles from the location of Morgan Harrington's remains. Matthew was charged with Hannah Graham's kidnapping on February 10, 2015, and on September 15 of that same year, he was also charged in connection with the Morgan Harrington case. However, it was later discovered that Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington were after a month of study. A number of Jesse Matthew victims fled Liberty University in Lynchburg after one of the female students accused him of rape. He was able to avoid punishment nevertheless, since the complainant abandoned the allegations. After enrolling at Christopher Newport University in Newport News a few days later in January 2003, Matthew was once more the target of the same accusations. The victim again retracted the accusations after the university police looked into the issue. Matthew, from January 15 to October 15 of 2003, I attended Newport University. There were 2 missing ladies during this time. The fate of Without a Trace and their locations are still unknown. No evidence linking Matthew to their cases or the Cassandra Morton case was discovered, despite the police's investigation into any possible connections between their disappearances and Matthew. With this knowledge, there is only one question that can be asked. If the police had done their job properly, and both colleges where the complaints were made, At least 2 lives would have been saved if Matthew had persevered in the cases without worrying about damaging their image. In Charlottesville, Matthew started working as a cab driver in 2005. It's important to note that in the same year, a woman traveling home from work in Fairfax was attacked. In the Fairfax case, Jesse Matthew was charged with 3 counts of kidnapping, and the police were able to get a DNA sample from the culprit at the time, which has since been found to match Jesse Matthews' DNA. First off, he was found guilty on all 3 counts and given a life sentence for each one on October 2, 2015. In addition to the 3 life sentences he has previously been given as of this writing, in the instances of Alicia Reynolds and Morgan Harrington, he was sentenced to 4 further life terms for each of those crimes on March 2, 2016. The positions of Sage Smith, Carolyn McDaniel, Samantha Ann Clark, Laura Winans, and Julianne Williams are still available. It is challenging when you look at these faces. It is difficult to think what additional horrors they may have kept buried in their closets, and it is much more difficult to comprehend the suffering they have caused the victims' loved ones. Share your opinion on this story in the comments, and don't forget to like it. Thanks for watching. Yeah. An 18-year-old student visited her family for the holidays, but a few days later, she vanished without a trace. The police got involved after her mother started receiving strange messages. None of them were ready for the truth they learned during the investigation, which truly shocked the entire family. On August 9, 1996, a Norfolk, Virginia suburb welcomed Angelica Hadsell into the world. She soon gave birth to 2 younger sisters, but when her parents got divorced in 2005, the girls stayed with their mother. Angelica had 3 younger sisters, who she got along well with after her mother remarried in 2010. They had another daughter. In Farmville, Virginia, about 3 hours away, Longwood University accepted Angelica after she graduated from a nearby high school. In addition to joining 2 sports teams, she also had a year-early graduation goal and had to work quickly to meet it. She continued to travel to Norfolk to see her sisters and parents on a regular basis. Despite this, when Angelica was 18 years old, she visited her family in March 2015 with the intention of staying for a few days during her spring break. Angelica was delighted to be able to return to her family, was in a good mood, and enjoyed spending time with them. She got her 3 younger daughters ready for school the next morning, March 2nd, and then left to go to work, leaving Angelica at home by herself. But when her mother came home from work in the afternoon, Angelica was gone. The back door was open, music was playing, and only a few of her belongings were put into the washer, giving the impression that she had left quickly. This puzzled her mother because she and her daughter were always in contact, and she expected Angelica to let her know if she was going somewhere. However, on this particular day, Angelica didn't answer her phone, so her mother wrote to her and inquired as to where she had gone. When asked where she had gone on her walk with friends, Angelica replied that she had gone for one, but she didn't say specifically where. They then messaged back and forth about when Angelica planned to come home, and this time her mother noticed something odd once more. She claimed that the messages from her daughter were written in a very distinctive manner compared to how she was used to. Normally, Angelica would send her detailed messages with all the pertinent information, but this time she only got brief, ambiguous messages. Despite this, the young woman's mother did not have any unfavorable suspicions, because she believed that the young woman simply wanted to hang out with her friends and that she was already 18 years old. Angelica didn't return home on that day, but she answered her messages anyway. She continued to evade questions about her location and her intended return time for the remainder of the day, though without providing any clear answers. Eventually, the daughter stopped responding to her mother. She then made the decision to contact Angelica's friends, but was disappointed to learn that no one had seen her and had any idea of where she was. The mother contacted police detectives that evening on March 3rd, after making the decision to do so. The young woman appeared to have left of her own free will at first. A note found in the house soon provided evidence in support of this version. It was probably written in Angelica's handwriting, according to Angelica's mother. One sentence is all there is. Angelica wrote that she needed some alone time with herself because of everything going on in a very strangely worded note. Her family could not comprehend what she was trying to say. She was a happy young lady who studied all her spare time and planned her future. She never made any significant life announcements, so the note seemed pointless. The fact that Angelica left her clothes, wallet, and car at home was also discovered by the police, which already refuted the claim that she left on her own initiative. There was, however, nothing to suggest the opposite at the time. A piece of Angelica's credit card was discovered nearby by Cody, a neighbor who lived close to Angelica's family, several days after the investigation began. He told the police about it, and that's when he was named as the prime suspect. He was questioned by detectives for 12 hours because they believed he might be connected to her disappearance. The police did not immediately drop their suspicions despite his denial of guilt. Additionally, according to Angelica's family members, by that point everyone in the neighborhood was aware of the case, and many people were attempting to aid the investigation. Teams were formed to scour the area for any proof, and everyone started to suspect Cody. After the credit card incident, it was discovered that he and Angelica went to the same university and dated for a while. Soon after, something else happened that seemed to link him to her disappearance. The situation changed quite strangely less than a week after the investigation started, when Wesley Hadsall, Angelica's stepfather, stormed into Cody's home and discovered Angelica's jacket there. Wesley, who was helping her friends find his daughter while they were searching for her, instructed them to go to Cody's house and search there for Angelica's belongings because he thought the boy was responsible for her disappearance. The friends went to Cody's house and did exactly that. They discovered her jacket there and immediately informed the police. Again being questioned, Cody was under tremendous pressure. Despite this, Cody claimed he had no idea where the investigators were, extremely perplexed. The detectives had a strong feeling that the boy was telling the truth during the interview, despite the fact that the jacket and Cody's home were both very important pieces of evidence. The most crucial thing he did was offer an alibi for the day of Angelica's disappearance, in addition to voluntarily giving his DNA sample, taking a polygraph test, and agreeing to anything else they asked of him. He may actually be innocent, the police concluded after investigating this information. Wesley, Angelica's stepfather, gave them the tip. They told Angelica's friends, who had found the jacket. With this knowledge, the detectives acknowledged that the man might have planted the jacket. The key question was, why would he do that? Wesley's involvement in his daughter's disappearance was the most likely explanation. When the police started looking into his background, they discovered that he had been charged with and found guilty of more than 10 offenses, all of varying degrees of seriousness. He was frequently detained for robbery, drug use, and possession. In 2005, he abducted his own wife and brutally treated her for a number of days. In any case, the court was unable to establish his guilt, so he was spared any significant penalties. Throughout his life, he had spent a number of times and years in prison. The investigators also learned that Wesley's mother had expelled him from the home a few weeks prior to Angelica's disappearance because he had begun abusing strong, illegal substances. He'd been staying in hotels ever since. He was a serious suspect in light of everything that had happened. When asked when he last saw Angelica during the interrogation, the man insisted that he had nothing to do with her disappearance and that he was actively looking for her. Around noon on the day of her disappearance, Wesley claimed to have seen her at a gas station. The detectives looked over the video from the gas station cameras and couldn't find any evidence to back up the young woman's request for a few $100s before they split up. Wesley's co-workers at work said he had taken a few hours off that day because his daughter had asked him for money. Around 2:00 p.m., he went back to work, nervous as ever. In his statement, there was a clear inconsistency. Wesley claimed to his co-workers that he had to leave because his daughter had requested money, but he admitted to the police that he had unintentionally seen Angelica at the gas station while driving by. There was no reason for Angelica to be at the gas station. Her car was parked close to her house. Wesley explained that the alarm had gone off at the home where he had been living prior to the argument with his wife when asked why he had left work that day. He also mentioned that he had received a notification on his phone. This information was not corroborated by the police, and it did not account for the blatant inconsistencies in his statement. In order to search Wesley's motel room, where he had been residing for the previous few weeks, the police next obtained a warrant. Interestingly, they discovered, because of his numerous convictions, Wesley had been maintaining a large number of guns and bullets. He was arrested right away because it was illegal for him to possess weapons. Wesley was accused of 3 crimes: illegal possession of a weapon, breaking into Cody's house, and tampering with evidence because of the jacket he allegedly planted in his room, even though there was no evidence pertaining to Angelica there. He continued to maintain that he was doing everything in his power to locate his daughter, despite having no involvement in her disappearance. As a result, the court gave him a 20-year prison term, and the detectives kept looking for the young lady. The most intriguing thing they found when they seized Wesley's work vehicle was the GPS navigator, which they sent for analysis to specialists. They also discovered shovel tape and dark gloves inside. According to the information they had on March 4th, the detectives were interested in learning where Wesley had gone in the days following Angelica's disappearance. Wesley left Norfolk and traveled 90 kilometers to a nearby town. He then returned to his job after parking his car somewhere for 20 minutes. On April 9th, the detective arrived at the scene and found his car parked in a remote area close to an abandoned house. They finally located Angelica's body in a nearby ditch after searching the area. Even though she was protected by a piece of plywood, it would have been extremely challenging to stumble upon her, because the area around the house was overgrown and inaccessible. As a result, no one could have done so. An unexpected statement was waiting for everyone after the body was sent for a medical examination. Participants discovered a level of illegal substances in the young woman's blood that was 3 times the amount that would have been fatal for a typical person, according to the results of the process. The shocked members of Angelica's family. The young lady was involved in sports, almost exclusively studied, and didn't even drink alcohol. She was not taking any illegal drugs, which no one could believe. A second round of tests was chosen by medical professionals. It is possible to tell if someone has used narcotic drugs in the past by looking at their hair, and this analysis revealed that Angelica had never had any experience with illegal drugs. Because of this, it was virtually impossible to believe that she would suddenly decide to take a triple dose of medication. A piece of plywood was also placed over her body after it had been buried in the ditch. Everything pointed to the possibility that these drugs were administered to the young woman against her will, with the intention of killing her while making it appear as though it was an accident. Wesley was interrogated by the detectives once more. When Angelica's body was discovered, the first thing they asked the man who was already in prison at the time was what his work car was doing nearby. The man's explanation, to put it mildly, was implausible. He claimed that he might have been set up and that he didn't go there on his own. He had additionally stated earlier that only he had access to this vehicle. Wesley even suggested that someone might have stolen his car's navigation system, driven to that residence, and then returned the device while the police gathered evidence. They were able to locate several recordings that demonstrated Wesley was in the city where his daughter's body was discovered on the same day, driving his work car from a number of street cameras situated along the route to this house. Even though everything pointed to the man being involved in the murder, the court still required additional proof, so the police worked on this case for several more years in an effort to gather indisputable evidence. Wesley was only charged with Angelica's murder at the end of the investigation because of this. According to the prosecution's account of events, the primary court hearings started in January 2022. Wesley went to the house on March 2nd, where Angelica was staying with the sole intent of robbing her and using her as a pawn in other violent crimes. He had planned to make it look like an accident, but instead, he took her out of the house, carried out his plan, and gave her a triple dose of drugs. The man had carefully thought out his plan. The police discovered repeatedly during countless interrogations. his denials, and made every effort to discredit himself. The prosecution was successful in locating a witness who corroborated their story. This witness sold Wesley the same illegal substances that killed Angelica. Additionally, the court heard that the location information from Leslie's phone and Angelica's phone were compared after the police discovered Angelica's phone on the street. Her phone had been next to Wesley's since the young woman vanished, even when messages were sent from her mother's account. It was clear from this that Wesley had taken Angelica's phone and was attempting to reassure Angelica's mother that everything was fine, insisting that their client was innocent. The defendant's attorneys, they said Wesley had nothing to do with it, that the girl was depressed and had decided to take her own life. This account omitted any information regarding who buried her and covered her with a piece of plywood, or why his car was found close to the location where her body was discovered. All of these defenses attempted to account for either coincidences or attempts to frame Wesley. Interestingly, despite having previously stated numerous times that he did not accept the overdose theory and thought Angelica was murdered, the man's opinion changed in court for an unknown reason, and the jury arrived at a decision in less than an hour. Wesley was convicted of murder and given a life sentence. The man stated that he would contest the judgment, and theoretically, he stands a good enough chance of succeeding in having the judgment reversed. As you might have guessed, there isn't a single physical piece of evidence against him. For instance, DNA evidence of his guilt would have been virtually unassailable if it had been discovered on the victim's body. Wesley's work vehicle was actually found close to the location where the young woman's body was later discovered, which is the main defense argument. The fact that this person abducted and violently treated his wife 10 years prior to the incident raises doubts about any of his other arguments, though none of them are particularly strong proof. Does the defense have any stronger evidence, or does the prosecution's version seem to be more convincing? Might very well succeed in getting a new hearing by contesting this decision. Your thoughts? Wesley is allegedly responsible for the murder, or is he unrelated? Share your opinion on this story in the comments and don't forget to like it. Thanks for watching.